Two gardening communities near Sevastopol were cut off from the city after a local agricultural enterprise installed a barrier on a section of the road. Entry is now toll-based. Even locals have to pay to get to their homes. They are protesting and intend to go to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The barrier on Poleznoye Shosse Street near the stele of the village of Sakharnaya Golovka near Sevastopol appeared last year. At the same time, another road led to the village and locals used it. But when this route was destroyed by flooding, the road with the barrier remained the only access to the garden plots. We learned that authority of Sevastopol wants to block our only road to our homes. Last year, the Sakharnaya Golovka Homeowners Association was flooded, and the bridge that we could use to enter via another road was destroyed. At the moment, they have installed a barrier, blocked the road completely, and went to charge us for it, local residents told the Russian telegram channel MASH. This situation was caused by the fact that the land, together with the road section, had previously been leased to an agricultural enterprise. This enterprise, with its founder in Moscow, has been growing various types of agricultural products in the Sevastopol region for many years. After investigations and appeals from people to the local authorities controlled by Moscow, the price was reduced to 1,000 rubles per car per year. The management of the agricultural enterprise claims that the fee for using the road is due to the need for its maintenance, but locals complain that there is no repair and the road surface is in poor condition. This is not an inconvenience, but the road to the houses is completely blocked. We just want to live in our houses and have free access to them, say residents of the gardening associations. They have been appealing to all authorities for several months so that officials can solve their problem. But so far, there have been no significant changes. The Russian authorities of Sevastopol advised people to go to court. The solution to the situation with the road closure can only be decided in the legal sphere, so people need to go to court. Considering that residents have become hostages of the situation, the government is ready to provide legal assistance, the Russian government of Sevastopol told journalists. Some have already despaired and are ready to formalize the right to travel for a fee. Others intend to continue to fight for their rights and want to reach the administration of the President of Russia, the Prosecutor General's Office, and the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation, local media write.
Another soldier of the occupying Russian army has surrendered to the Ukrainian army. In the direction of the city of Kharkiv in Zaporizhia region, the occupying soldier signaled to a Ukrainian drone that he wanted to surrender and followed the drone. However, nearby Russian servicemen tried to prevent their fellow soldier from surrendering and attempted to shoot him with various weapons, including kamikaze drones. At least 7 mortar rounds were fired, and a kamikaze drone exploded nearby, but this did not stop the Russian soldier who intended to surrender. He advanced to the position of the Ukrainian fighters.
Russians should not hope for the occupation of Kherson, not to mention Kyiv, Odessa or Transnistria. The disintegration of the Russian armed forces is in full swing. The situation is very explosive. This frank statement was made by the Russian angry patriot Z-blogger Maxim Kalashnikov. In one of his latest blogs, Kalashnikov admitted that the Russian troops are in a deep crisis. According to him, it is pointless to talk about an offensive on Kherson or about forcing the Dnieper now. What Kherson? What Transnistria? What forcing of the Dnieper? Guys, you know the troops are very exhausted. Very unpleasant processes are happening there in the relations between officers and privates. I just won't make it public now, but there is a very large flow of information. Bad information. Kalashnikov said, these words sound especially telling against the backdrop of constant propaganda about the successes of the Russian army and attempts to impose on society the illusion of control over the situation. Even if figures like Kalashnikov begin to talk about internal problems, it means the situation at the front is much worse than they are trying to present in the official agenda. The mention of unpleasant processes between commanders and personnel hints at a deep split within the army system. It is about demoralization, loss of discipline, conflicts, and a drop in morale. All this is a direct consequence of a protracted war, endless losses, and the lack of a clear goal. Earlier, Z Patriot is worried about the future of the Russian Federation. He expects that the Russian Federation will repeat the fate of the disappeared Russian Empire and the USSR. Kalashnikov compared the current stage of the war with previous crisis moments for Russia. For example, with the halt of the offensive at the beginning of the SVO and the loss of the cruiser Moskva, with the flight of the Russian army from Kherson and Izium, as well as with the Prigozhin mutiny. However, now, according to Kalashnikov, the main threat is not the front, but the worsening economic crisis inside the country. We are facing a dangerous economic crisis. A protracted war is a terrible disaster that is fraught with economic collapse, even inevitably leading to it. Our own economy has fallen into the millstones. The Ukrainian economy receives a lot of support from Western allies, but we do not have such support. I believe that the crisis will be very, very strong. This can really undermine both the economy and political stability, Kalashnikov said. Against the backdrop of significant combat losses and the gradual depletion of resources, the Russian military political leadership is trying to drag another country into the war against Ukraine. As noted by the main intelligence directorate, HUR, of the Ministry of Defense, in addition to the mass recruitment of mercenaries from African and Asian countries, as well as units of the DPRK, the Kremlin is working on the possibility of drawing so-called partners into the war against Ukraine under the guise of implementing humanitarian projects in Russian regions bordering Ukraine. The next country that Russia is trying to drag into the war is Laos, the HUR emphasized. Intelligence reported that the Kremlin is currently organizing the involvement of a combined detachment of engineering troops of the Lao People's Army to demining areas in the Kursk region. This country is very dependent on external aid. Therefore, as noted by intelligence, the leadership of Laos at the initial stage expressed its readiness to send up to 50 military sappers to the Russian Federation. In addition, Laos provides free treatment to Russian occupiers wounded in the war against Ukraine. Russia, hiding behind humanitarian rhetoric, is trying to legalize the presence of a foreign military contingent on its territory, using it to support military operations against Ukraine, the GUR stated. On July the 2nd, it became known that North Korea would send 30,000 soldiers to the war against Ukraine. As satellite images showed, Russia has already begun transporting North Korean soldiers to its territory. South Korea's National Intelligence Service said North Korea had begun selecting personnel for the mission, which could take place as early as July or August. As CNN reports, citing a Ukrainian intelligence assessment, the troops could arrive in Russia in the coming months, in addition to the 11,000 sent in November 2024, which helped the Russians repel Ukraine's offensive in the Kursk region. According to Western officials, about 4,000 of those North Korean soldiers were killed or wounded during the deployment, but Pyongyang's cooperation with Moscow has flourished since then. The Ukrainian assessment states that the Russian Defense Ministry is capable of providing the necessary equipment, weapons and ammunition for further integration into Russian combat units. The document adds that there is a high probability that North Korean soldiers will reinforce Russian troops during a new offensive. Jenny Town, a senior fellow and director at the Korea program at the Stimson Center, said the Ukrainian estimate of 30,000 sounded overstated, but the 20,000 figure was likely. The analyst noted that in any case they would not be elite soldiers, but that it all depends on what Russia asks for. There are rumors that Russian generals are already in North Korea and training troops there.